Welcome to Stellar Sisters, the podcast where cosmic wisdom meets soul-enriching conversation.
We explore astrology, human design, and the unique blueprint of your soul, helping you understand yourself on a deeper level.
Consider this your permission slip to embrace the magic of being authentically you.
Let's begin. Hello, and welcome to the Stellar Sister podcast, where we're your hosts, Sydney.
And Shaniel.
And this podcast is all about astrology and human design with a little bit of motherhood sprinkled in. My name is Sydney. I'm a Libra rising, an Aquarius sun and moon. I'm a 6'2" emotional projector. And Shaniel, what are you?
So I'm a Capricorn rising, Libra sun, Gemini moon. I'm a 5'1" emotional manifester. And we'll talk about what all of that means. If you are not super familiar with astrology or human design, we'll get into all of it. I'm really the astrology expert, and Sydney is the human design expert. And I think we both know a little bit about astrology and human design, but Sydney knows way more about human design than I do.
Yes. Yeah, and we're excited to talk about both of them because they overlap and intertwine in so many different ways. And just the energetics of it all is so fascinating and interesting to both of us.
Mm-hmm.
And we would just want to talk a little bit about how and why we're doing this and how we met each other.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure.
And I think the best place to start is that Shaniel and I both went to Penn State, but we didn't know each other. She was in the year ahead of me. And even though we're just like 6 months apart, she was a year ahead of me. But we ended up both studying abroad in France. And it was this really small summer program. I think maybe 30 kids from out of 40,000 kids that went to Penn State went on this little study abroad trip to this super small town in France called Besançon. And we all went to Paris to start the trip out. And that's where we first met each other. And the crazy thing about this small little study abroad program that we took is that we had to take a test to test into what class we were going to be in. And almost everybody that came from our school was kind of in like the level 2, like they're a little bit higher. And Shaniel and I and one of our other really good friends, we all tested into like a little bit of a lower level to start out in. And we were all kind of like, what? Like, we know French better than most of these kids that are in this level too. But it was just like such a fated thing that ended up happening because it was just the three of us. We ended up becoming super close. And it was just so nice to kind of quiet the noise of everybody else and just really get to know each other. Because if we hadn't have been put in that class, like we had lunch breaks together and we spent the whole day together every day for an entire summer. And I think that's what really like facilitated this friendship between us. And we've been friends now for what, 16 years? So
That was 2009. Yeah,
yeah.
so 16, almost 16 years. Yeah.
Yeah. So I just love that part of our story because it's like just the fact that we both picked this place to go and study French and go here for the summer. I don't know if we would have ever met each other at Penn State if we both hadn't have done that study abroad.
Yeah, no, we definitely would have. It's such a huge school.
Yeah.
And that's so true. I kind of forgot about like testing into the classes and how us three, me, you, and our other friend, all tested into the same class. I kind of totally forgot about that, but you're right. It was almost like that was meant to be so we could develop
Yeah.
that close of a friendship because
Yeah.
I don't know that that would have happened if it happened any other way, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was super special, I think. Um,
Mhm.
and why don't you tell people a little bit how you got into astrology? Um, and then I'll go after that because you really introduced me to astrology before I even got into human design. So why don't you talk a little bit about that and then I'll go into how I got into it.
Yeah, so I think I've always been interested in astrology, like, I don't know, since I was little. Like all probably millennial teenagers, like reading your horoscope and teen magazines and things like that. But um, yeah, I think in my 20s, I realized that there was more to astrology than just your sun sign. And I kind of played around online and pulled up my birth chart and realized I was a Capricorn rising and Gemini moon. And I just instantly wanted to know everything that there was to know about my entire birth chart and the birth charts of all my friends and people that I loved so I could understand them better. And it was 2019, I believe, that I took my first astrology course with Rebecca Gordon, who is a really great astrologer. And that really kind of kicked me off into learning all about astrology. And I've since taken and learned from some really great astrologers like Kelly Surtees and Chris Brennan and Adam Ellenboss of Nightlight Astrology. And they have really been some of my biggest teachers. And in 2020, I believe, is when I created my astrology business and just started doing readings um, for myself and started my Instagram. And so I've been giving readings now for almost 5 years, which is kind of crazy to
That
say
is,
that
yeah.
it's been that long. But and giving readings is like one of my favorite things to do. And taught me a lot about astrology, just giving readings over the past 5 years, because I can talk to people in real time about what the transits mean for them in their chart. So that's why
Mm.
I love it, because it's astrology still amazes me to this day, how accurate it is. Um, but yeah, that is a little bit about my astrology journey.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, and I spent my early 20s just working, working, working. I started a company with my cousin, which is super successful today. And I was just working so much every single day, 7 days a week, all the time, not taking a break. And eventually got burnt out from that and ended up leaving and selling my share of the company. And that was back in 2017. And at that point, I was just like, what's next? Like, what am I going to do next? So that's kind of, I mean, like you, I was always into horoscopes and like angel cards. And I think I wanted to be a witch every year for Halloween for like 6 years in a row. And I've just,
Yes.
I thought that when I turned 16 that I was going to be like Sabrina the Teenage Witch and have like all these powers and just be able to do all these cool things. But that didn't happen. So I've just always
Yeah.
kind
And
of,
side note, Practical Magic was always
oh
my
yeah,
favorite movie as a little girl.
me too. Love that movie. Practical Magic. Still get inspiration from that.
Oh, yeah.
Um, yeah, so I'd say 2017, I kind of just started getting more into spirituality in general. And it was 2018, it was summer of 2018. Like you and I think we were driving to a bachelorette party and we were talking about astrology. And you told me, you were like, yeah, I mean, every single planet has a place in the chart. Like when you were born, every planet was somewhere in the sky, and that's like the energy that's brought in. And I was like, what? Like it was mind blowing to me to hear all of this. And that kind of sent me down a spiral of just looking more into astrology myself. Um, and just listening to different podcasts about astrology. And then I stumbled upon human design in 2019 and learned that I was a projector. And it just made so much sense to me because I was always just like working my ass off like other people and just thinking like I am so burnt out and like all these other people seem to be fine. And you know, a lot of my friends would go out after work. I lived in New York for a while and like that was the thing. And I was just like, how are people surviving like this? And when I learned that I was a projector, it was just so validating to know that like I need more rest than other people. And again, we'll get into more of the human design and astrology things and what things mean. But um, when I found it in 2019, it was just so eye-opening for me. And it was kind of just always in the back of my head, like, okay, I'm a projector. I didn't really get much, go deep into it then. And then, so over the years, I just was always fascinated by astrology and human design and kind of just listening to podcasts and reading here and there. And then I had my daughter in 2022, and then I found human design again right after that. And it was kind of like a refinding of that. And I just started diving deeper into human design and like wanting to learn every aspect of it. There's just so much to learn in the human design world. Um, so I've been studying human design since end of 2022. And it's just so fascinating how we're all so different and how we all kind of just fit into each other like a puzzle. And it's like if we can use our energy correctly, we can be together in a I'm losing my train of thought.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think astrology and human design give you the permission to be who you are. And that is so validating,
Yes.
because, you know, as a projector, like you were saying, you are not meant to grind day in and day out, 60 hours a week, like someone who is a generator might like doing. That might feel good to them. But when we're in this culture that says that's what everybody should be doing, and if you don't do
Yeah.
that, then you're not a hard worker and you're lazy or whatever, um, it gives you the permission to be who you are and who you were meant to be, and not try to fit into someone else's box. And that's what I love
Exactly.
about astrology and human design is like it gives you a permission slip to be who you are. Not everybody is meant to live the exact same way. And but sometimes I know I can get caught up in, well, I'm supposed to be doing this, and I'm supposed to be doing that. And, but when I can kind of come back and center myself and accept myself for who I am, you know, and honor those that about myself, that this is the way that I'm supposed to do things. And it's okay if somebody else does that differently.
Mhm.
It's just so validating. And it's such a good reminder, um, to have, I think.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. And like knowing that I am an emotional authority in human design has changed my life. I think
Hmm.
about it all the time.
I know.
Um, as an emotional authority, and we'll get into this on future podcasts. I know we'll do a whole episode on authority
Yeah.
because it's so important. But like and you're an emotional authority too.
Yeah, I
So
am.
like knowing that we need to wait to make decisions, and that like it doesn't come to us like always instantly, has changed my life and given me the permission to be like, Hmm, let me think. Let me just sleep on this
Yep.
decision that
Yes.
and like make sure that it's right. Whereas someone who has what, like sacral authority
Yeah.
might know instantly
Instantly.
that that's
Yeah.
something that's for them, you know?
Yep.
And not
Yeah.
saying that emotional authority can't get that instant knowing, but as someone who has emotional authority, that doesn't happen to me very
No.
often.
Yeah. I mean, it's so true. It has, same for me. It's just given me so much permission to say, like, no, like your salesy email that's saying like right now you have to act right now, like that's not for me because when I have acted on those kinds of things, like instantly buy now at this price, I usually have buyer's remorse or regret it or like it's not what I was expecting. And when I take the time to say, nope, I'm gonna sleep on that, like the deal will come again or a better deal will come later, it's usually aligned down the line, and it ends up being in divine timing or the correct thing for me. And it takes a lot of practice to listen to that emotional authority. It
Yeah.
just takes so much practice to listen to it because your mind wants you to make this decision quickly and people with emotional authority need time, a day, even a week to like mull it over and to
Hmm.
genuinely see if it's something that's going to make you happy.
Yes, totally. And just knowing that has given me like so much permission. And even him in my relationship, because my partner has sacral authority. So
Yeah.
he knows right away. And he's like, don't you know? And I'm like, no, I don't know. Um, and so it's also kind of cool to see how that works for him and doesn't work for me. And like, that's okay that we're different in that way,
Hmm.
and it has given him the understanding of how I operate too, which is really cool. But yeah, and just in general, I think what I love about astrology and human design is that it gives you validation, confirmation, that you're on the right track, you're on the right path, you are, you know, um, living the most authentic version of you. Um, and especially with astrology, that there is a divine timing for everything. And your time will come, whether that's love, business, family. There is a divine timing for everything for that. And it, I think, helps not compare your path to someone else's,
Yes.
because you are trusting the divine timing of the universe, of God, of whatever resonates with you. Um,
Hmm.
and let's just, again, honoring yourself and your own timing and your own destiny, actually.
Hmm.
So,
Yeah,
yeah.
I love that. And I mean, last thing I'll say about astrology that I love is just kind of and we'll get into the transits. Chanel will talk a lot about that. But I love being aware of that and seeing what's going on and just paying attention. What's the moon doing today or next week, and how is that affecting you? And just kind of using the transits as like a weather report and having awareness of them and not blaming things on astrology, but just kind of watching the energy unfold in front of you. And like Chanel said, it's just it all happens in divine timing.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, absolutely. It's um, like if you know that Mars is retrograde in your seventh house of relationships, then, maybe you can be a little aware that there might be some tension in your relationships coming up. But it's not necessarily a bad thing. And it doesn't mean that it's, you're going to break up, but there is some revising and some revision that is probably coming up in your relationships at this time. And how can you work through that to come together more? And so that um, that conflict is wanting to be sorted out at this time.
Yeah.
And so that might be like a time when things are really coming up and it could feel really bad and awful, but knowing that like this is actually coming up to be sorted out so you can move forward and resolve, whatever
Yeah.
might be coming up for you.
I love that.
So it's good to know that because it can just feel like, oh my gosh, why am I fighting with everybody right now? Why is there no understanding here? But if you know that, oh, Mars is retrograde in my seventh house, there's some revision happening. There's opportunity for conflict resolution here.
Hmm.
Um, and what needs to happen to make my relationships better.
Hmm. It's so true. My husband and I met under a Mars retrograde, and he's a Scorpio rising, so he's ruled by Mars. And I
Mm.
just find that now that I have the awareness of it, I think almost every Mars retrograde, I'm like, oh, there's a Mars retrograde coming up. I'm kind of worried, a little scared, like what's going to happen. But I don't know if it's because our relationship started, like we met each other under a Mars retrograde. But I find that, like you just said, like some conflict might come up, but I always feel like we make it out on the other side just so much stronger, and our relationship deepens and develops, and we have deeper conversations during that time. So it's just such a cool tool to use.
Yeah, it is fascinating once you understand the patterns and repetitions in astrology, and it's it's just so interesting. I could talk about it forever.
Yeah, and that's why we started this podcast so we can talk about it forever.
Exactly.
So, just what to expect from us? I mean, we're going to dive deep into astrology. There's countless things that we could talk about, and human design. And we're both pretty new moms. I have a 2.5-year old. Chanel has an almost 1-year old.
Yes.
And we're going to weave in motherhood because, I mean, we can't not talk about it. I want to talk about it. I want to talk about
Yeah.
the hard things about it because nobody talks about that.
Yes.
And I think it's so helpful when people actually tell you the truth about pregnancy and birth and postpartum and dealing with a toddler. Um,
Hmm. And
so,
raising them in
yes,
awareness of astrology and human design.
yes, being a parent with those tools. Um, so, we're going to get into all of that. And it's not going to be heavy on motherhood, but it is going to be woven in because we're both moms and we love it.
Yes.
The reason why we named this podcast the Stellar Sisters is because Chanel and I have always gotten that we look like sisters. Not even sisters. Sometimes people think that we're twins. And
Mm.
it's weird because, like, I see it sometimes, but not really all the time. And I find that it's more so people that don't really know us, like, they're not close friends or family, or maybe just don't see us all the time. And when some stranger or person who hasn't seen us in a while and sees us together, they're like, whoa, you guys really look like twins. I mean, even like, I don't know, even some of my family members, Chanel would come visit, like extended family members would say, oh, you guys do look like sisters. So, and we've always just had this spiritual connection. Chanel will get into something spiritual and it will prompt me to get into something spiritual. And then I'll tell her about something I saw and then she's into it. And we have these endless conversations. And so we've always just kind of felt like soul sisters, spirit sisters. And that's how Stellar Sisters was formed.
Yeah, totally. And not only do we look alike and like get mistaken for sisters, but there are weird synchronicities in our life. Like both
Yeah.
our initials are SW, or at least yours were before you got married.
Yeah.
And your middle name and family name is Brown, which is my partner's last name and my son's last name.
Yeah.
We drove the same car, which we didn't know because you lived in California and I lived in New York. And when you moved back, we're like, we're driving the same car? That's weird. And it might sound silly, but it's just like there's so many little things
Yeah.
like in our lives like that are just so connected
Yeah.
and just feel like synchronicity is beyond the normal. It just feels like
Yeah.
there's some sort of, spiritual connection. Like we must have
Hmm.
been real sisters in a past life or something like
Yeah. Something. I
that.
mean, my phone has even brought your picture up and like suggested it as facial recognition, like when I'm searching for like a picture of myself for like a passport photo or whatever I was doing. Like it came up with Chanel's face as a suggestion. So it's just if the phone is recognizing it, it's just wild.
Yeah, yeah. So there's definitely a connection there beyond just, you know, friends. There's some sort of spiritual connection there. Um and I'm a Libra sun and you are a Libra rising.
Hmm.
And like I'm a Libra sun at 7 degrees and you're a Libra rising at 3 degrees, right?
Yeah,
So
almost
like we're
four. Yeah.
almost for it. Yeah. So like
Hmm.
very close there. Obviously you're Aquarius sun and moon. I'm a Gemini moon,
So
Libra
we have
sun. So
that,
like
we have a grand air trine together.
yes, lots of air with like flowing and conversations and ideas and um just a lot of things align, a lot of things align with
Hmm.
our charts and it's cool. It's fun. Yeah, so we're just getting started. We'll talk about lots of different things, spirituality, astrology, human design, parenthood. Um, and we'd love to hear if there are any topics that you'd like us to cover. So please drop us a line on Instagram or via email and let us know what you'd like to hear. But we have lots of cool topics in store for you, and we're excited to chat. So thank you for listening and following along, and we'll see you soon.